And yesterday we had spoken about mm, how we can distinguish between emotional suppression and emotional regulation. And we've been trying to learn why emotional regulation is so important, what it does. And today we go one step ahead where we try and understand, try and find out why quick relief doesn't really help us when it comes to our emotional habits and working on our emotional habits, and why we need to think of long term benefit, because quick relief can often cause long term exhaustion. And we'll try and understand how chemicals in the brain, like dopamine, it affects our impulses, how emotional habits can lead to short term gratification or a long term benefit for ourselves, for our minds, for our habits, for our emotional energy. So, not every impulse that we have is aligned with our well being, and we know that. We know that not everything we might be doing um, really, adds to how we feel, or adds to how we behave. We tend to react, we tend to respond to certain situations. And 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 that's a distinction that we're trying to make, as to understand fully and understand more deeply which habits will nurture me and create long term benefit for me. So as always, I'd like you to really come to the session. So we'll do an intention setting, if possible, taking a moment to close your eyes and connecting with the breath. Just trying to determine or acknowledge the quality of your breath today without judging. Feeling the breath at your nostrils. And then following your breath to your body. So, following the passage of the breath through the nostrils into perhaps the chest, the belly, sides of the body, wherever you feel your breath is making its way to. And same for the out breath, following the out breath to its end. And then through the breath, also trying to acknowledge the body, being aware of your body, being aware of how the body feels today. Is it different from the last time you checked in with your body? Does it feel any kind of tightness anywhere, any stress in the body? And with the breath, relaxing as much as you can, bringing yourself here, nowhere else to go, nothing to do, being really present with body, mind, and breath in the session today. And I'd like to start with asking a question, which you can silently think of in your mind the answer to. What do you reach for when you don't want to feel discomfort? What do you reach for when you don't want to feel discomfort? And we have our unique ways, our own very creative escapes. What is the one thing that you do when you don't want to feel discomfort? And the kind of things we do could be shopping, scrolling, overeating, overworking, distracting ourselves with something, shutting down. wanting constant stimulation. What do you reach out for when you don't want to feel discomfort? And we can often tend to think of ourselves, like we can think of ourselves that I am, say, addicted to shopping, or I watch a lot of Netflix, or I tend to eat sweets when I'm not feeling so good. But rather than being addicted to pleasure, most of us are just trying to escape discomfort. And that's a very important distinction to make. So today we want to explore why quick emotional relief can sometimes keep us emotionally exhausted. And this week we've been learning a lot about, our reactions, and the entire intention of module 2 that we are studying and practicing together is to be the boss of our reactions. In day 1, we learned more about emotional reactivity. Second day was about mental overload. Yesterday we learned emotional regulation and how it's different from emotional suppression. And today we want to explore our impulses. So what happens when the nervous system desperately wants immediate relief? What happens to the mind? What happens to our habits? What happens to how we react? So, if you've been able to come to the answer of what do you reach out for when you want to avoid discomfort, maybe going one step ahead and thinking for yourself. Today, I want to become more aware of my habit of doing so and so when I feel uncomfortable. And if you'd like, you can share it here with everyone through the chat, or maybe just make a note of it for yourself. This is when we set an intention that I want to become more aware of my habit of maybe scrolling, or reacting, overthinking, overworking because I'm feeling uncomfortable. And keeping that intention with yourself through the practice. And again, we're not trying to judge ourselves, we're just trying to understand ourselves better, because until we understand, until we become aware, we will not be able to create change. Um, so yeah, now trying to maybe understand a bit about the brain and how it works, what it does. So our brain has a reward system, and this reward system is designed to help us seek pleasure, to keep us motivated, and also to provide us relief. And one of the major chemicals involved in this reward system of the brain is dopamine. Dopamine creates anticipation. So it pushes the brain towards novelty, reward, pursuit, stimulation, and also towards relief. Now, the problem is that the brain can often become trained, or often prefer immediate relief over long term well being. And seeking quick relief can feel so powerful because the brain wants to avoid us making us feel bad, or see us suffer, so it wants to like quickly take away our struggle. But as you know, we also see with parenting that sometimes short-term gratification might not be as as helpful or as beneficial as thinking about long-term well-being. So then, when we engage in behaviors, say when we are scrolling because we are feeling anxious, when we react impulsively, or when we emotionally eat, when we overwork, when we check our phones constantly or numb ourselves through distraction, all these behaviors, they give the nervous system temporary relief. And the brain learns that there is discomfort. Now, if I do this very quickly, learn this behavior, engage in it, then I will find relief. So it's understood that this is the cycle I need to follow: discomfort, quick behavior, relief. However, that relief is temporary relief, but every time we engage in that loop, the loop strengthens. So while the relief is real, we do feel better, it is short. We often also see that with substances, anything that um, when we do that, it could give us temporary relief, but it's short lived. And this quick uh, dopamine, the spikes, they fade away very quickly. And which is why many people repeatedly return to the same habits, even when they know the habit is not helping them long term. So we end up compulsively doing these things while at the back of the mind, we do know that they are not good for us or they are not creating any change in us. However, we find ourselves unable to break the loop. So whether it's overconsumption, compulsive checking, staying in unhealthy patterns, the nervous system has become conditioned to seek immediate soothing. And where we need to sort of use our discretion is that we don't need to act on every impulse. Impulses are not commands. An urge is a signal. I feel an urge. It's the brain trying to give me a signal that, okay, there is discomfort and it's trying its best to relieve us of it. However, it's not an instruction. So, uh, many people, a lot of us, when we experience discomfort and we immediately obey the impulse that follows, it's not just that the loop is strengthened, it's also that we've maybe at times pulled ourselves out of long-term benefit. So say when there is anxiety and we avoid something, or when there is discomfort, so we react, when there is loneliness, so we distract ourselves, or when there is anger, we attack. These are all habitual loops of our behavior, of our impulses. But we can take back control because we can tell ourselves that I can feel an urge without immediately acting on it. And that's where we begin to shift in how we react. So we can, to repeat, feel an urge without immediately reacting to it. Um, and discipline in that sense, or that kind of restraint is that sense, is a nervous system skill. All skills can be built and worked upon. We can tend to label ourselves as I'm not good um, at keeping quiet when I'm feeling really angry, or when I'm feeling volatile. I need to do this. I cannot say I can't not shop. I need to do it because my willpower is weak. Or we can say that, okay, um, this person this person is sort of designed to be this way. I am not that way. But we should know that this kind of discipline or impulse control is a skill that all of us can learn. And it's actually a way to self support, because we can think of discipline sometimes as punishment. But every time we learn to pause before an impulsive reaction, we are strengthening the brain's capacity for conscious choice. And the more often we interrupt the brain's automatic habits, the more new pathways strengthen. So, um, as anything, it's repetition. And the more we repeat, say, a positive behavior, the more we interrupt and break an automatic habit, the stronger these new ways of behaving, these new ways of acting, these new pathways in the brain develop and strengthen. And so we need to interrupt these impulses one at a time, but keep going at them. So the goal again is not to eliminate completely our impulses or never feeling any kind of urge again. The goal is that we can become so aware that we are choosing, and it's not happening by default to us. It's not like we are at the mercy of our impulses or our reactions. We choose what we want to do through awareness. Mm, and if we pick, you know, any of the habits that we sort of know are not really serving our best interest, mm, we will find, if we go back a bit, that many of these habits begin as attempts to comfort ourselves. So maybe, yeah, taking a moment to think about it. Any habit that you feel like is detrimental to your well-being or not adding to your well-being, think about how you developed the habit or how that habit began. And was that as an attempt to comfort yourself? And then perhaps also asking, when we engage in something, is it truly helping me or only helping me escape this moment temporarily? So again, making a note for yourself. What impulsive habit do you turn to most often under stress? And if anyone would like to share theirs in the chat, you're welcome to do so. Else, please just writing it down for yourself. What impulsive habit do you turn to most often during stress? And asking, what feeling are you usually trying to avoid in those moments? Is it, say, as examples, loneliness, uncertainty, anxiety, inadequacy, emptiness, overwhelm? What feeling are you usually trying to avoid in those moments? And if you have those answers, great. But even if you've not been able to really arrive or pinpoint what it is for you, we'll now practice together. And through the practice, we will try and come to understand our, maybe the wounds inside us better, but also how can we practice pausing, and how can we practice making that something that stays with us, and that we can access every time we are faced with an uncomfortable situation, or every time we are faced with a trigger that makes us behave or escape in a certain way. So, to start our practice, I would request you, if possible today, to sit straight, back, erect but soft, and close your eyes gently if comfortable, else you can just lower your gaze. Connecting to the breath. And if at any point in the practice you feel distracted, you can catch yourself whenever you do and bring yourself back to your breath or the sound of my voice. So, as much as we can, staying connected with the breath, with the practice. And if it's comfortable for you today, trying to deepen the breath a bit. Inhaling, exhaling with awareness. And see if you can make the exhale longer than the inhale. This really helps calm the nervous system, helps us feel more grounded. more present, not forcing the breath. And with that, I'd like you to bring to mind a recent moment where you could have acted impulsively. Bringing to mind a recent moment where you could have acted impulsively. Maybe you sent a reactive message. Maybe you avoided something important. You reached out for some kind of distraction. And trying and staying away from the story. So, not getting stuck, in the storyline of what was happening, but just connecting to that moment. And more importantly, connecting to what feeling existed just before the impulse. How were you feeling right before you did what you did? Staying away from judging ourselves, staying away from labeling it as anything. What feeling existed just before the impulse? And some possible emotions are boredom, anxiety, loneliness, shame, say overwhelm, restlessness, or something else, whatever it is for you. What was that feeling that existed right before the impulse? And when asking yourself, what is it that you actually wanted in that moment? What would have helped me actually with how I was feeling? Maybe it was talking to someone, maybe it was um, taking a walk, maybe it was doing something that I was feeling uncomfortable. So, in a way, you're asking yourself, what was the impulse a substitute for? And then seeing if you can offer compassion to yourself, some kindness to the emotion that you were feeling. So maybe telling yourself that I know I was feeling anxious and I can extend my love and care towards that anxiety. Sometimes all we need to do for ourselves is offer us attention, care, listen to what we need. And then, as we practiced yesterday, Can I sit with this uncomfortable feeling and give it my attention without wanting to kill it, without rushing for it to go away? Can I just be present with whatever it is I'm feeling? And with that, maybe repeating these words silently in your mind or saying them out loud, whatever feels best for you today. Even though I can sometimes act on an impulse, I deeply and completely love, honor, and accept myself. Even though it can sometimes be hard for me to deal with my emotions, I deeply and completely love, honor, and accept myself. Even though I sometimes find it challenging to deal with what is happening, I deeply and completely love, honor, and accept myself. And with that, bringing some gentle movement to toes and fingers, giving yourself a good stretch and opening your eyes. Thanks for the practice today, practicing together. And just to recap, what we were trying to understand today was that our urges are not commands we necessarily need to follow. And an urge is usually taking us away from the real emotion because it wants to protect us from suffering, wants to relieve us of the discomfort. However, we do know that it's only short term and it is not contributing to our long term well being. So, there are certain steps that we can follow for working on our urges because we also know that every time we break an automatic habit, pattern of behavior, we strengthen a new one, which is beneficial for us. So if you find yourself acting on an impulse, um, going ahead, going into life after this session, maybe pausing and thinking for yourself, what am I actually feeling underneath this urge? So identifying the real emotion, identifying the real gap, and then giving yourself some time to sit with that discomfort. I don't want to escape whatever it is I'm feeling. I can be present with it. And you will realize that as you bring your awareness to it, bring your presence to it, name it, be okay with feeling that discomfort, that feeling will begin to fade away slowly because feelings come and pass. And then maybe going one step ahead and also asking yourself, whatever it is, that my impulse is acting me to do, will this choice support me long term or only soothe me briefly? And then what do I really need to do? What will really help me? What will make me feel better? So, supporting yourself through the discomfort, being your own friend, not wanting to run away from it, not wanting to throw it out of the window, just having some, I wouldn't even say some, a lot of compassion for yourself, for undergoing whatever you are, and also telling yourself that you can have the courage to acknowledge, to sit with it, and then to deal with it. So, with that, um, this was all I had to say um, on the teaching, on the practice. Now, if there are any questions, you could type them in the chat or raise your hand so we can take questions. But we already have a couple of comments in the chat today. One is, I think Neeru is asking, how do I start to break a habit that I believe is an escape from the discomfort I feel? And yeah, that's our that's the task we are trying to do. It's what we did in the practice today. How do I start to break a habit? We start to break an habit by one being aware of it, that this is a habit which is not contributing to my long-term well-being, and then recognizing what is the discomfort that you are actually feeling, and extending your presence, your awareness, your compassion to that discomfort, becoming comfortable with staying with the discomfort. And then, as we said, going one step ahead and giving yourself what you actually need. So, um, so breaking habits, again, breaking every time we work on a pattern, every time we work on, a reaction, we strengthen a new pathway, which could be beneficial for us. So, thanks for that question. Now, we have another one which says, the permanent solution is resolving or facing the root cause. Mm, that is, where does that discomfort arise or why? That worked for me. And yeah, that's brilliant. That's actually the work that we all need to do, which is identify what is the real emotion that underlies this urge or this impulse. What is it that my brain, my feeling, my heart is really telling me? So when we discover or when we arrive at the root cause, is when we can help ourselves, because until the brain knows what it is fighting against, it won't really have a solution. So the moment we are able to sit, think about, become aware of what is it that is actually present, we can name it, is when we can find another route to solving for it. So thanks Ashmi for that sharing. If anyone wants to share their experience from today's session or from any of the things that we've spoken about, please feel free to do so. Any questions? And yeah, we've reached almost towards the end of module 2 today. Module 1, we learned about know yourself, grow yourself. Module 2 has been be the boss of your reaction. And on Mighty Champions Daily Live, we really take one aspect of um, mental health, and we really dive deep into both the understanding of it and how we can put it into practice. So not just theoretical, but using it to our benefit in our day-to-day lives. So yeah, I'd request you to join our sessions, to explore that, to experience that for yourself, share with others. And tomorrow we have a special session. We have a guest coming on to MCD Live. So please be there, and see you next time. Thank you for attending. Thanks a lot.